That's correct. Good evening. Welcome back. Nice to have you. We are starting a new parak tonight, parak Lulav ve'arava, and we're going to be learning some sugyas that are very halacha l'maisa. We're going to be learning sugyas that explain to us a little bit of the history and a little bit of the development of how we got to what we do. That, for example, we don't use a lulav on Shabbos. That was not necessarily the custom by the times of the Beis HaMikdash, as we'll see in this Mishnah. So we're starting at a new parak. We'll start in the middle of Mem Beis Mid Beis. We'll learn all of Mem Gimel, and we'll learn the first Amud of Mem Daled as well. So a little bit of learning, but the first Mishnah is the first Amud, so it's not so bad. The Mishnah opens at the new parak, Lulav ve'arava shisha v'shiva. When it comes to the Lulav and the Arava, sometimes one will use them 6 out of the 7 days, and sometimes they'll use them 7. Hahalal v'hasimcha shmona, that applies throughout, even for Shmini Atzeres. Sukkah v'nisuch hamayim shiva, that applies over 7 days. The mitzvah of Sukkah and nisuch hamayim hechalil, Rashi points out, this is Simchas Beis HaShoeva, Chamisha v'shisha, sometimes it'll be 5 days and sometimes it'll be 6. Lulav shiva ketzad, how does it work out? The lulav will be used for 7 days. What about Shabbos? Right? We know, of course, Shmini Atzeres is out. That's not a day for which there's a chiyuv. That's a separate yontif altogether. So here the only question is, how do you work out 7 days? So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's not even 2 Shabbos. It's like, how can you use it all days? One of those days is Shabbos. So it says the Gemara, Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Shechalios B'Shabbos Lulav Shiva. Wow. That means that when the first day of Yontif falls out to be Shabbos, that you bring a Lulav and Esrog. Okay, that's not what we do, and we'll see the development of the Gemara as to how that happened, but that is what the Mishnah says. Ush'ar kol hayamim, had it been that Yontif started on another day, then, says the Mishnah, Shisha, then it would only be 6 days. Namely, if instead of Yontif beginning on Shabbos, Yontif began on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, on any of those days, then whenever Shabbos would fall out, as long as it's not day 1, then Shabbos would not have the mitzvah of lulav. Only when Shabbos and Yontif coincide as day 1 of Yontif, that is when we override our general rules of muktzah and allow for the mitzvah of lulav and esrog to be performed on Shabbos. Arava shiva ketzad. How do we do this with the arava? Says the Gemara, Yom hashvi shel arava shechalios b'Shabbos, arava shiva. Here, the exact opposite. If the 7th day, let's say, in other words, if Yontif started on a Sunday, and then the 7th day falls out to be Shabbos. Under those circumstances, says the Mishnah, that's when you would do the Arava even on Shabbos. Again, trump card over there. Why the first day for Lulav? Why the 7th day for Arava? We'll discuss this in the Gemara. Ush'ar kolei yamim shisha, that had it been that 7th day, as it relates to Arava, that at that 7th day, but any day of the week other than a Saturday, so then assuming that other Shabbos would have been one of the first 6 days, then on that day we would not have done the Arava. So the Mishnah says about 8 lines into the Mishnah, a little more than halfway down, 2/3 of the way down, mitzvahs lulav ketzad. How does the mitzvah of lulav work out? So it says the Mishnah, Yom Tov Harishon Shel Chag Shechalios B'Shabbos, when the first day of Yontif and is also Shabbos, when they coincide on day 1 of the holiday, people would bring their lulavim and esrogim to Harabais before Yontif would start. And the people who were running the ship there at the Beis HaMikdash, Mekabel and Mehen, they would say, thank you very much, Karesh, Merzel, you got cost, everyone's got their lulavim and esrogim. The sojourn osan al gabe itztaba, they would have a table out there, or they'd have some type of a place to put all the lulavim and esrogim. It's reminiscent when you walk into a yeshivish place and there's like a hat wall, and everybody knows which hat is theirs by the dust collection. They can tell this is my hat. So lulavim and esrogim as well. They were masader, all of them in the Beis HaMikdash. But those who were the elders, the righteous elders of the community, theirs were kept in a separate room. They're chashaviyim. They're not the regular Jew. They were special people. Now, a halachic caveat, umalamdan osam lomar, 8 lines from the bottom in Beis Mid Beis, and when people were giving over their lulavim and esrogim to the chazanim to hold on to in the Beis HaMikdash, they were training them to say, malamdan osam lomar, they trained them to say, kol mishamagia lulavi liyado hare hu lo b'matana. If anyone picks up my lulav and esrog, it is an automatic matana I'm saying it in advance. Anyone who uses my lulav and esrog gets a matana. Why? This is the halacha that we learned a couple of days ago, that a person cannot be yotze the mitzvah of lulav shel chavero unless it was done as a matana al manas lahachzir. And we saw the unique shita that if you were not machzir it, then you broke the conditions of matana al manas lahachzir. So here, because the
person would not be yotze.
Correct. The person would absolutely not be yotze. It's a zero. You could have picked up a twig would have been the same thing halachically, absolutely. Lamachar, the next day, so everybody drops off all their lulavim and esrogim. This was on a Friday, Erev Sukkah, and then the next morning it's Shabbos morning and Yontiv, and that people would go and pick up their lulavim and esrogim. Lamachar mashkim and uvayin, the chazanim zorkin usan lifnim. They're like, okay, here's yours and here's yours. They're throwing them all over the place, and then vehin mechatven umakin ishes chaver. People kept getting poked in the eyes. I know with like my children, certainly the younger ones, like I have to remind them when they're holding their lulav not to hold them pointed forward. It's like instinctive to hold it that way, because when you hold a bat and you're like ready to swing, it's like outward a little bit before you start. That's how they're holding the lulav. No, there's people point the lulav and esrog up, point the lulav upward so you don't hurt anybody. But in this episode, people were getting hurt. So it says the Gemara, Ukshero, says the Mishnah 4 or 5 lines from the bottom on Mem Beis Merala. Ukshero bezdin shaboli de sakana, because people were getting injured. Hiskinu sheyehei kol echad beechad notel beveso. They changed gears. Now, what did they say? They said that you should just be mevarech at home. Just do the mitzvah lulav and esrog. It's much, much safer. And for those who are mehader and spend a lot of money on lulavim and esrogim, you don't. It's not the place to be. It's a whole zoo. So just do it at home. Benachas uvneimus. All of this is, of course, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Either do it in the Beis Hamikdash or do it at home. So the conclusion of our Mishnah is that while true that it would have been ideal to do it in the Beis Hamikdash, but if you can't, then you can't. It's dangerous. So do it at home. The Gemara opens 3 lines from the bottom. Amai, I don't understand something.
This whole Mishnah is based on Shabbos. So why wouldn't, if it's ending off like this, because it's dangerous, because it's sakana, then I would think it shouldn't be only in Shabbos, should be the entire year because of the sakana.
No, you can carry on the other days. You just can't carry on Shabbos. So you had to bring your lulav in advance when the first day was Yontif and Shabbos. You couldn't carry. So that's why they had to bring them in advance. But if the first day of Yontif was a Tuesday, there's no Isser of carry. There's no Isser Hotzah. There's no Isser Hotzah on Yontif. So you can carry those days. That's not a problem. It only played out on Shabbos.
So the day sakana is only.
It's only when the first day of Yontif and Shabbos coincide. Right. Gerald, do you want to say something? The Gemara opens with a question on I don't understand why there would be any problem on any day of the week, whenever, not on any day of the week. I don't understand why, let's say Shabbos was day 2. So we understand Shabbos is day 1. We don't know yet why, but the Mishnah does write that if Shabbos and Yontif coincide on day 1, we override the halachos of Muksa. But says the Gemara, let's say Shabbos was day 2. What's the problem? Tiltul ba'almu, v'lidchei Shabbos. It's just a din derabanan of Muksa, and this is a mitzvah d'oraisa. Why are we being so strict on the din derabanan of Muksa to lose out on the opportunity of?
It can't be Shabbos. The rule of a lower do rush, so it can't be.
We'll discuss that in the Gemara briefly. The Gemara answers with what? What comes out on Shabbos?
No, he's saying the second day.
No, I'm asking it's a theoretical question. It could be Wednesday, whatever.
Even then, it was like the idea, law de rush didn't apply.
It did not apply at all. The Gemara is going to discuss that as well, that people were being Mekadesh Alpi Alavana. That's correct. But here, either way, my question is theoretical. The Gemara's question is theoretical. Let's say Shabbos is not day 1. It's day 4. Who cares? Whatever. Day 5. Doesn't make a difference. Why would we allow on day 1 to trump the Isser Muksa, but on any of the subsequent days that happen to be Shabbos, we don't trump it? So answers the Gemara with a famous Gezerah, one that thank God doesn't apply this year, but has applied for a number of years in the past. Amar Rabba, this is what we refer to as Gezerah de Rabba. Amar Rabba, Gezerah Shema Yidlenu biyado, v'yelech etzel baki lilmod. Maybe he would grab the lulav and esrog in his hand. He has a shaila, a kasha, he wants to find out if his lulav and esrog are perfectly kosher. He goes to ask a baki. Top of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, and because of that, if it was not day 1, if Shabbos and Yontif don't coincide in day 1, and it's day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, so therefore, says the Gemara in the name of Rabbah, therefore we do not allow for one to be Yotzei the mitzvah of lulav on any of those subsequent Shabbos days, days 2 through 7. So it says the Gemara, v'hainu taima de shofar, v'hainu taima de Megillah. This is also the reason why we do not allow for us, we don't allow ourselves to blow shofar when Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah coincide, and also for Megillah, which is why we push off Purim, because we don't want to be in a scenario where a person's going to have to carry. Okay, what about all the other halachos of the day? Matanos Levyonim, that's good shilas, but it's about the Megillah. The concern is the Megillah. So then says the Gemara, I don't understand. If Gzeira Derabba is a problem on days 2 through 7, why isn't it a problem on day 1? So the Gemara, Ihachi, Yom Rishon Nami. The Mishnah was so simply speaking, yeah, of course, when Yom Tov Rishon and Shabbos coincide, all is well. You can violate the Surim of Muktzah in order to be Yotzei the mitzvah of Lulav. So why is it that on Yom Rishon we're not concerned? Says the Gemara, Rishon hatakinu le Rabbanan bebeso. Did you look at our Mishnah? You're not carrying, you're not doing anything. You're doing it at home. So there's no concern about Gzeira Derabba. What was Gzeira Derabba? Gzeira Derabba was Shema Yavirenu Arba Amos Bershus Harabim. But we already saw that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, the Chachamim said, no carrying the lulav anywhere. You're doing it in your house. You're doing it bebeso. There is no Gzeira Derabba. What concern it? To carry it where? From your living room table to your kitchen table. You're not going anywhere. There is no Gzeira Derabba. And therefore, says the Gemara, on Yom Tov Rishon, you can still do the mitzvah because you're not going anywhere. But Taka, if you were going somewhere, that's a problem.
It doesn't really answer the question, because
Why?
the whole reason was that you were taking it if you had a shaila about the limit. So you could have.
Oh, that's
section
Givaldic
on-
diuk. That's a great
on-
diuk.
On Shabbos as well, which is the first step.
That's a beautiful
Gemara
question.
began talking about tiltal and ended up talking about Shema Yaviren.
It's a different answer. The Gemara's question was, what about tiltal? The Gemara's answer is, that's not our concern at all.
And it's always, Dennis Bravo says Shema Yaviren.
It's an excellent question. And not only that, look at the last Rashi on the page. It's not stam. The last Rashi on Mem Beis Mid says, Lilmod Na'anu O Birchasu is a halachic shaila. Why doesn't that apply? Maybe because you don't have to bring. Maybe Rashi's, I'm making a diuk in Rashi. I would never have said this without your question. Maybe look at what Rashi's saying. What type of shaila are you asking? You're asking about the na'anuim and you're asking about the bracha. You're not asking about the lulav or the esrog. You're asking a shaila specifically about a technique. You don't need to carry anything with you for that. What?
Saw before, you just pick it up and you're yotzing. I knew him is nice, but.
For sure that, but maybe he could have carried it upside down and then you would have been putter. It's not mutter, you would have been putter as we saw. But I think that's what Rashi's doing right now. Rashi's saying, I'm going to go to my Rebbe's house. He has a lulav there. He'll show me how to do na'anum. I don't have to bring my lulav and esrog, as opposed to saying, I'm not sure about the tiomes. I'm not sure about the spot.
Oh, so you're even that he'll go.
Rashi is saying, what shaila is he asking? He's not asking a shaila that requires him to carry the lulav with him. He's asking shailas about the technique of how to use them. What's the bracha? And you don't have to carry. That's a balabatish answer in Rashi. I'm not sure I'm right, but great question. It didn't hit me. But that's what the Gemara says. And on Yom Rishon Nami, because Gzeira Derabba doesn't apply, because the Mishnah had already concluded that in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, people were being mevarech at home, no problem at all, no Gzeira Derabba. Says the Gemara, Hatenach achar takana. Okay, that's only true after the Chachamim saw that people were beating each other with ulavim and esrogim, and they changed gears and they said things have to stay at home. Kodem takana ma'ika lemeimar. Okay, but what about in the beginning of the Mishnah when everybody Taka was bringing it to the Beis HaMikdash? Now we have Gzeira Derabba. What was the heter in the ratio of the Mishnah that we would say that we still should say that you're allowed to violate whatever you need to violate? We allow a person. Why would we say that you can do that? Ella, says the Gemara, a different answer. Why is it that we allow for the why is it that we allow on Yom Tov Rishon to have the mitzvah of lulav, afal pi that it's Shabbos? It says the Gemara 5 lines down, Mem Gimel Lamed Aleph, Ela Rishon de Isei min haTorah b'gvulen lo gazru b'hu rabbanon. When it comes to the mitzvah of lulav and esrog on day 1, which is on day 1, and on day 1 b'gvulen outside of the mikdash there's a din deoraisa, so therefore lo gazru b'hu rabbanon. But Hanach on days 2 through 7, de lesnehu min haTorah b'gvulen gazru b'hu rabbanon. The only din deoraisa is on day 1, days 2 through 7, no. So therefore, it says the Gemara, a chakira, a clear line in the sand. Because day 1 is a din deoraisa, we're just not so concerned. It's very strange. Most dinei derabanan are on dinei deoraisa, right? That's where Gzeiros typically kick in. It's a very strange answer in the Gemara. I'm just saying on my own. Didn't look this up, but it's a difficult answer. It says the Gemara, Ihachi, if that's the answer that you're saying, then ha'id nanami. Well, if that's true, then we should also have that halacha l'maisa post churban. right? We said in our Mishnah that it's only lebeso. And post Churban, we don't do this, right? We don't use the lulav and esrog on, even if Shabbos and Yom Tov coincide on day one, we still don't do lulav and esrog because it's din d'oraisa. Still a din d'oraisa for lulav and esrog. Why don't we then do it today? So says the Gemara, because anan lo yadinan b'kivua diyarcha. To David's point earlier, we don't know how to do the months. We live in Bavel. We live in Bavel. Remember who's talking? Now, these are the Amoraim from Bavel. We don't know what we're talking about. Says the Gemara, okay, you don't, but the people in Eretz Yisrael do. But inhu diyadi b'kivua diyarcha lidchum. Maybe the people in Eretz Yisrael post Churban, let's talk about the year 300, the times of the Amoraim, they should have done the mitzvah of lulav and esrog when Yom Tov and Shabbos coincided on day one of Sukkot. After all, they know how to be kovea the yareach. They know what they're doing. Let it be. Then they should be able to do the mitzvah. Says the Gemara, you're absolutely right. There was a period of time in history where Chutz La'aretz and Eretz Yisrael had different minhagim when Shabbos and Yom Tov coincided. If you lived in Chutz La'aretz, you did not use a lulav. If you lived in Eretz Yisrael, you did. Post Churban, when Yom Tov and Shabbos coincided on day one. Beautiful historical point. And says the Gemara, I can bring you a proof. Ditnan Chada, we have one Mishnah that says as follows: B'Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechal Yos B'Shabbos Kol Ha'am Molichen Es Lulavein Lahar HaBayis, like we saw. And then B'Tznan Idach, we have another Mishnah that said the Beis HaKnesset. So in one tkufa you would bring it to the Beis HaMikdash, and in another tkufa it was to the Beis HaKnesses. Shma Mina, what do we see from here? Kam Bizman She Beis HaMikdash Kaim, Kam Bizman She'ein Beis HaMikdash Kaim. Shma Mina. So we see that you're absolutely right that when the Beis HaMikdash was Kaim and when it's not, there are different answers. Okay, so it's really just fascinating historically to see such a split and that it didn't last, even though it's true that there's a din d'oraisa of lulav on day one. Afal pikein, but the reinu ata, we don't do this. When lulav and when the mitzvah of lulav applies, it does, even though it's a din d'oraisa on day one, we still override it and we attribute it loosely to Gzeira D'Rabba. Now, why is that the case? Because seemingly from the flow of the Gemara, it's because we're not Yodei B'Kivua D'Yarcha. But now we have it all down to a perfect science. Esha Torah is a whole shiur on the fractions of the fractions of the fractions that the Gemara gives about the lunar month and how spot on it is, way more accurate than the Gregorian calendar with all of its accommodations for trying to compensate with leap years. I mean, the way that we have it down is, down to many decimal points of seconds in time. It's pretty remarkable. Still, we don't have such a din, and seemingly it's because of Gzeira D'Rabba. Okay, that brings us to a question that we kind of made as an assumption earlier. We're about a third of the way down in Mem Gimel Amud Aleph to Isei Minator B'Gvulim Minolan. How do we know that there's a din d'oraisa of lulav outside of the Beis HaMikdash? Says the Gemara, a brisa that we've seen in part, and now we'll see it in full in its appropriate location. The Tanya, the brisa writes, "Ulekachtem." The pasuk reads, "Ulekachtem lachem bayom harishon." We're going to darshan all of those words. Ulekachtem shetehei lakicha biyad kol echad ve'echad. Everyone has a mitzvah to do lulav and esrog. Lachem mishalachem lahotzi es hashol ve'es hagazol. The word lachem teaches us, of course, as we know globally, that there's a din of lachem and that it applies here as well. The next word that we're going to darshan is bayom. Ulekachtem lachem bayom, says the Gemara, ve'afilu b'Shabbos, and says the word Gemara, the next word rishon. It's really harishon. First, we're going to be darshaning the word rishon, and then we'll add in the hey. Rishon afilu bigvulin. That's us, right? We're outside of Eretz Yisrael. And harishon melamed she'eno doche ela yom tov rishon bilvad. The only time we have a trump card to allow lulav and esrog to be done bigvulin, when it's Shabbos, is when Shabbos also coincides with day one. And this is the drasha that teaches us this Mari Makom, that there is a din d'oraisa bigvul. Again, it doesn't play out. Lamaisa, it doesn't play out. But it was one of the svaras of the Gemara earlier to say that because it's a din d'oraisa over here, so therefore we might be making. Again, we're not Lamaisa, we don't paskin in that way. Says the Gemara halfway down, let's analyze a piece of this drasha, of this brisa that we just learned. Omar Mar, when it says Bayom Afilu B'Shabbos, I don't understand. Why do I need the pasuk to tell me afilu b'Shabbos? At least the drasha of Bayom afilu b'Shabbos michti tilto ba'almahu itzrich kral and mishrei tilto. Why do I need a pasuk in Chumash? It's not even rational. You have a pasuk in Chumash to make sure that you know that the din d'Rabbanan doesn't apply. Of course, technically speaking, it shouldn't apply. Gzeira D'Rabba, fine, but midoraisa, we're not. Gzeira D'Rabba is above and beyond. It's your mavatal the mitzvah saseh b'shei ve'al taseh. Your oker a mitzvah saseh b'shei ve'al taseh. That's more accurate language. But I don't know What was bayom v'afilu b'Shabbos coming to include? It's tiltul. There's nothing else going on. So says the Gemara, quite a different answer than we saw earlier with Rabbah. Omar Rava, halfway down, says the Gemara, lo nitzarcha el lemachshirei lulav. No, we're talking about, let's say someone was not prepared and they did not yet prepare their lulav, and the only lulav that's left is attached to a tree. So says the Gemara, ve'aliba d'hai tana d'tanya. What does the Brisa write according to one Tana, which is Rabbi Eliezer? Lulav v'chol machshirav dochen es haShabbos dire Rabbi Eliezer. One is even allowed to cut that lulav off of a tree on the morning of. It's machshirei mitzvah. We have discussions like this by bris milah about hechsher mitzvah. Can you carry the aspalanis? Can you carry the bandage? So we say we wrap it around the finger. Terribly unsterile. Your fingers are filthy. Unrecommended for the modern generation. And if you have to do that, put a glove on first. It's not so sterile, but okay, then we can discuss that another time. So that's what the Gemara says here, is that really what was the pasuk when it says bayom ve'afilu b'Shabbos u'kachtem lachem bayom harishon? What does the word bayom come to teach us? So it comes to teach us that we know that there are shitas ve'afilu b'Shabbos that allow to even cut the lulav off the tree. My time in the Rabbi Eliezer. Why was he so lenient? Amar kra bayom ve'afilu b'Shabbos. Beautiful. He uses our drasha. So now we see how the word bayom is used. The word bayom for Rabbi Eliezer comes to teach us ve'afilu b'Shabbos, even as a machshir, even as a hechsher mitzvah, that you can cut the lulav off the tree. But that's not everyone's opinion. That's just the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbanan don't agree with him. They hold that the hechsher mitzvah is not allowed. So Rabbanan, says the Gemara, hi bayom my avidle. We know how Rabbi Eliezer used bayom. It was to include the hechsher mitzvah of cutting it off the tree. But the Rabbanan don't hold of that. So hi bayom my avidle. What do they hold with the word bayom? How do they darshan that word? They use this word to teach us that the lulav is only a mitzvah during the day and not at night. Our classical line in the sand of mitzvah saseh shazman grama. Beautiful. Says the Gemara, well, that's great. Now, this is the ping pong of drashas, right? Well, then if you hold that this is bayom v'lo balayla, the Rabbi Eliezer, where do you learn that it's bayom and v'lo balayla? So the Gemara answers, bayom v'lo balayla minale. He answers, nafkale mi seifa dekra. If you look at the rest of the pasuk, or if you look at a later pasuk, you'll see the answer to that. The pasuk says, in the beginning of the pasuk, it says, "Ulkachtem lachem v'chulei," and at the end of the pasuk, it says, "Usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokechem shivas yamim v'lo leilos." And this pasuk is, of course, referencing Succah at large, not just lulav, because lulav was the beginning of the pasuk, but the end says, "Usmachtem lifnei Hashem." You should have simcha. See, but simcha is not the din of lulav. Simcha is a very specific din. V'samachta b'chagecha. We know that there's a din deoraisa for one to have hana, a certain type of simcha. Maybe ain't simcha ela b'basar, which is something we'll come across tonight as well. So that's where Rabbi Eliezer learns that lulav is only applicable during the day and not at night. So says the Gemara, the Rabbanan were very concerned about that. You're learning that lulav only applies during the day from Sukkah, which also is a mitzvah at night. That's a very strange marimakom. And the Gemara is very bothered by that. V'Rabbanan, 3/4 of the way down, V'Rabbanan, the rabbi said, hold on 1 second. Ime hasam, if you're going to learn that the mitzvah of lulav only applies during the day, from a pasuk that speaks about Sukkah, which applies also at night, Havamina, that Leilaf Yamim Yamim Sukkah, that maybe we would make an inappropriate connection in words where we learn from Sukkah to Lulav, Malahalan Yamim Va'afilu Leilos, that maybe we would inaccurately say that just like by Sukkah, we know that the mitzvah applies by day and by night. So Afkan, maybe we'd argue by Lulav as well, Afkan Nami Yamim Va'afilu Leilos. That's a beautiful question of the Gemara. So the Rabbanan reject that outright. They say that's a ridiculous argument. So now let's dig in a little bit on this argument, because we're about to learn a Tosefta. I think it's a Tosefta. I didn't look. No, it might just be a regular brisa. The Sukkah gufa minalan. What, just generally speaking, how do we know that Sukkah is a 24-hour a day affair? That we say that it's constant, that it is a 24-hour day mitzvah, that it is both during Yom and during Laila. So it says the Gemara D'Tana Rabban. We have to hold cup in this brisa. The brisa writes as follows. The pasuk says, "Basukkah teishvu shivas yamim, yamim ve'afilu leilos." Isn't that funny? We just looked at the word yamim and excluded Laila, and now we're saying yamim ve'afilu leilos, and the brisa picks up on that. Ata omer yamim ve'afilu leilos. The way that you learned the drasha was to be inclusive. Oh, eno ela yamim v'lo leilos. Maybe I could argue that this should be exclusionary. The dinhu, and it's logical to say that this word yamim is exclusionary. Why is it logical? Because Ne'emar kan yamim v'ne'emar belulav yamim. By Sukkah it says yamim, and by lulav it says yamim. Malahalan yamim v'lo leilos. Just like by lulav, we would say that the mitzvah applies only during the day and not at night. Afkan, by Sukkah as well, maybe we would argue yamim v'lo leilos. I easily could have learned that drasha a different way. Could you imagine what Sukkot would be like if it was only during the day? A whole different bria. Oh, the Brisa continues. Kalach l'derech zu. Maybe I could have argued a different understanding altogether. Ne'emar kan yamim, v'ne'emar b'miluim yamim. Maybe by Sukkah it says yamim, and by miluim, by the inauguration of the Beis Hamikdash, the Kohanim had to stay around the clock. Ma'alahalan yamim v'afilu leilos. Just like by the miluim, Aaron and his children had to be there 24/7. Afkan yamim v'afilu leilos. So we don't know how to learn the word yamim. In this brisa, it either could be learned inclusionary, that even, just I'll steal the language, yamim ve'afilu leilos, as opposed to yamim v'lo leilos. We don't know which one, and we can argue both cases. So the brisa continues, nira lemi doma, 4 or 5 lines from the bottom. Let's see which approach makes sense. Do we say, danin davar shemitzvaso kol hayom davar shemitzvaso kol hayom? The common denominator of Sukkah and Miluim is that they're 24/7 mitzvos. There's no day versus night distinction. But ve'al yochiach davar shemitzvaso sha'achas, to exclude, and we should not learn from the world of lulav, which is a momentary mitzvah that takes place only during the day. Oh, maybe I would have argued that the other approach, it makes more sense. Maybe I should say done in davar shemitzvaso l'doros midavar shemitzvaso l'doros. Maybe we should only compare Sukkah, which is a long-term mitzvah, and lulav, which is a long-term mitzvah. But but from the inauguration, that's only by an inauguration. That's not every year. So we're unclear. We have 2 ways of looking at the word yamim. Is it yamim ve'afilu leilos, or is it yamim v'lo leilos? And says the Gemara, by svara, we don't know. We're not sure. Talmud Lomar, turning to the top of Mem Gimel Amud Beis, therefore, Teshvu l'gzera shava. The Gemara says, because we don't know, we have to make a gzera shava to learn out that Sukkah is in fact a Yom and Laila mitzvah. Says the Gemara, Ne'emar kan teshvu, v'ne'emar b'miluim teshvu. It says by Sukkah the word teshvu, and it says by miluim teshvu, ma'lahalan yamim ve'afilu leilos, afkan yamim ve'afilu leilos. Phew. It's a close call, because the Gemara easily could have gone the other direction based on that brisa, that maybe we would have argued that Sukkah really is Yom and not Laila, because it was comparable. The word, there was yamim, we could have learned from Sukkah. Says the Gemara, we have a gzera shava. And the gzera shava that we learn is from the world of Miluim to the world of Sukkah, and therefore the mitzvah of Sukkah is a 24/7 mitzvah. Gimel Amud Beis, 3rd line. Arava Shiva Ketzat. So we said in our Mishnah that it's possible that an Arava, that by the mitzvah of Arava, which is distinct from the Lulav, right? We've learned this already, that the minhag of the Aravos was a different minhag. So says the Gemara, how did that happen 7 days? And the Mishnah had said that if the 7th day is a Shabbos, so then we allow that to be a day where we trump all other derabanan concerns, and we allow for the Arava to be taken on the 7th day, which is Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Arava b'shvi, my time adach is Shabbos. Why do we say that if Yom Tov, if the 7th day of Yom Tov and Shabbos coincide, namely if that year started on a Sunday and the 7th day fell out on Shabbos, that we allow for the Arava to be brought? So it says, Amar Rav Yochanan, k'dei lefarsim shehi mina Torah. This is to teach us something that a lot of people may not know, which is that there's a din deoraisa to bring an Arava. If this is true, lulav nami lidche k'dei lefarsim oshu mina Torah, I don't understand. Why wouldn't we then say that when it comes to lulav, that whenever Shabbos falls out, days 1 through 7, who cares? We should always say kedei lefarsamo, that it's a din deoraisa. Says the Gemara, we can't do that. Why can't we do that? Why can't we say on days 2 through 7 that we want to be mefarsem the mitzvah of lulav just like we would by an arava? So the Gemara answers, lulav gzera mishum deraba, because of the concern of carrying. If you have a concern of carrying by lulav, why don't you have a concern of carrying by arava? Yachi arava nami nigzor. Why don't we also extend the gzera deraba from the world of lulav to the world of arava as well? So says the Gemara, we just didn't know what we're talking about. Let's see what was happening historically. Arava shluchei bezdin maisila, but lulav lekol masor, very different. The aravos that was brought. We have this in shul too. Somebody else brings we don't know who it is, but somebody brings the aravos to shul. We're like unfamiliar. I think got to pay $4 for it, and nobody ever has changed. Venmo, the world is changing. But over there, that's what happened in the Beis Hamikdash too. Shluchei bezdin maisila. So therefore, gzera deraba is inapplicable to the world of arava. Shabbos. Somebody else brought it to the Beis Hamikdash. You didn't have to worry about it. However, lulav is maser lakol. All of us have our own lulavim and esrogim. We buy chinuch ones for the kids, kosher chinuch ones for the kids, which is appropriate. You're not supposed to give a kid who's at the age of chinuch a non-kosher lulav. A 3-year-old, you want to give them a lemon, no problem. But if they're of age, they can't make a bracha on a lulav that isn't a lulav. The mitzvah should be done kitzurasa. It should be done properly, and it doesn't have to be mahudar. They're going to play catch with that. They're not going to be mature about it. But l'chol hapachos, if you're buying one, it has to be kosher. The chinuch ones that we buy are kosher. Midina, they're just typically not mahudar. Good. So that's how the Gemara says that there's no reason to apply Gzeira Derabba to the world of Arav. If that's true, Kol Yom Nami Lidche. If that's true, then why don't we always allow for why is it only the seventh day? If the seventh day falls out on Shabbos, that we allow for our Rava to trump the rules of Shabbos? Any day should work. So it says the Gemara, Asalat Puke Belulav. The problem is that if you did that, then people will think it's like lulav. So it says the Gemara, Velidche Yom Tov Rishon. Okay, then just do it on Yom Tov Rishon. I don't understand. Like this whole thing is so strange. You pick the seventh day. No, Lo Mukha Milsa, because Amre Lulav Hu de Kachazi. Because then it seems like the lulav and the arava are the same thing. Says the Gemara, I still don't understand. Why did you pick day 7? Pick day 6, day 5, day 4. I don't understand. So the Gemara gives a beautiful answer. Once you're no longer doing day 1, which was a Yom of Isser Malacha, Ukma Ashvi. So some of Porshim explained that we want to pick a day that is a day where there's no Isser Malacha where there's Isser Malacha and not Chol HaMoed. So that's only days 1 and day 7. If that's true, if all of these arguments are true, then it should still be the case that if the 7th day of Yom Tov coincides with Shabbos, that we should be able to bring the Aravos, we should be able to have that particular mitzvah part to be done. So answers the Gemara, we don't know what we're talking about. We're B'nai Bavel, we're B'nai Chutz La'aretz, and we don't know how to be Kovei the months. Says the Gemara, wait a second, maybe here too, just like by Lulav, we had a distinction between the B'nai Chutz La'aretz and the Bnei Eretz Yisrael post Churban, where seemingly in Eretz Yisrael they still did the mitzvah of lulav on Shabbos when Shabbos coincided with day 1. We should say the same thing by Arava. When day 7 is Shabbos, we should do the same. So it says the Gemara as follows: it never happened. Ki asa bar hedya, that's a person. Omar lo ikla. The days never coincided like that. That Saturday was never the last day of that's Adurosh, that's the Aleph, is that we would never have Aleph be the first day of Yom Tov. It never happened. So says the Gemara, I don't know what schedule you're on. Kiyasa Ravin v'chol nechuse Yama. Should say Yama. I didn't even look. What's that little nechuse ma'arava? When Ravin came with a bit of an entourage, Amre Ikla, you're incorrect. It does happen, but velo dachi, but it doesn't trump. Why doesn't it trump? Why? I don't know. After all of our conversations, we know that the 7th day, if it's Shabbos, that the Arava should still be mutter ve'ala kashya. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef, you're asking the question all wrong. Man leimalan de Arava benetila. Who says that you actually have to carry the Arava? You might have seen some of the picture books where they have a very, very tall Arava leaning against the Mizbeach. Okay, so then maybe that's what was going on. Dilma bizakifa. Maybe all that we're talking about is that it was just nizkaf. It was just leaning up against there. Yeah, you walked around the mizbeach, but you weren't holding aravos. That was just a minhag. That's what it was. Or dindo raisa, as we saw. We'll get back to that in a moment. So then it says the Gemara, Dilma bizakifa. Now we're going to see 3 questions on this assumption that you're not actually carrying the arava to do this particular mitzvah, but rather it's just standing there bizakifa. We're a third of the way down, a little bit more, mem gimel amid beis. Esve Abaye. Abaye asks on this assumption of Rav Yosef. Remember that Rav Yosef was a 3rd century, and his Talmud was Abaye. Abaye is in shiur. He's raising his hand and saying, Rebbe, I have a question. I don't understand. After all, we have a brisa. Lulav ve'arava shisha v'shiva. It's our Mishnah, actually. It's not a brisa. Our Mishnah says that a lulav and arava, they were grouped together to teach us that sometimes in some years we have these mitzvos for 6 days and sometimes 6 days and sometimes for 7. So my love kilulav. Don't we then assume that an arava is like a lulav? My lulav benatila, af arava benatila. You're trying to say that the arava was bizakifa, that it was just standing there. But if you've grouped them together in our Mishnah to say that lulav and arava are similar, they're grouped together, why wouldn't we assume that just like a lulav is benatila, where you have to hold it, so to the arava is benatila and not bizakifa? That's a great question. So it says Rav Yosef back to me, the area, you're not even thinking straight up. Come on. These are different mitzvos entirely. They have different Mari Makomos. Remember, we saw that according to some, Arava was learned out from Halacha L'Moshe Sinai. And ulakachtem lachem pri yitzador kapos tmar manaf eitzos v'renachal. That's a pasuk in Chumash, totally different mitzvos. Yeah, they're grouped together because they're common in that sometimes it's 6 days out of the 7 and sometimes it's 7 days out of the 7. But the mitzvos are different, so not a good question. Next question, halfway down, another question. Another brisa that speaks about the mitzvah about Rava, that every day you'd walk around the Mizbeach one time. This is our Hoshanos. Every day you'd walk around the Mizbeach one time. But also Ayom, which we would call Hoshana Rabbah, Sheva Pe'amim, you'd walk around 7 times. It says the Gemara, my love Rava, doesn't that imply that you're carrying an Arava? Says the Gemara, no, the lulav. And in fact, that is what we do, is that we walk around with a lulav on those days. It seems to be that some of the Amoraim held that when one was makif the mizbech, that they were holding an arava. Says the Gemara, congratulations, but that's his opinion, not mine. Amar le, who amar lach be'arava va'ana amina belulav. That's what he holds, but I don't hold that way. I hold it it's a lulav. And now we're going to see a collection of shitas lakanu lakan. Some saying that the mitzvah of walking around the Mizbeach was with a lulav, and some saying that it was not, it was with an arava. Itmar, the Amoraim speak about this. Rabbi Lazar Amar Belula, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nasan Amar Rabbi Chanina be'arava, V'chein Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rabba bar Avua be'arava. Fine, different shitas. And then one more of these shitas is a little bit more of a storyline. We are 2/3 of the way down on Mem Gim Lamed Beis Amar Le Rava le Rabbi Yitzchak Berei de Rabba bar Bar Chana. He says to Rabba bar Bar Chana, he says, Bar Uriah, bright one, come over here. Milsa Ma'al Yasa Dehava Amar Avuch. Let me tell you a beautiful Dvar Torah that your father told me. Haditznan, the Mishnah writes, Kol Hayom Makivin Es HaMizbech Pamachas Ve'oso Hayom Makivin Es HaMizbech Sheva Pa'amim. That was the brisa that Mishnah that we just quoted by the mitzvah of to surround the Mizbech, to walk around it every day, and on Hoshana Rabbah 7 times. Hachi Amar Avuch Mishmei de Rebbe Lazar. What did your father say? Belulav. And that is, in fact, again, how we paskin. And that's why we don't carry the aravos around when we do our hakafos by the Hoshanas, because we paskin like Rabbi Lazar, we paskin like this shita, that when we do this, it must be with a lulav. Fine. Question number 3, 12 lines from the bottom. Esvei. Lulav doches haShabbos betchilaso ve'arava besofo. This reflects what we saw in our Mishnah, that a lulav on day 1, where Shabbos and Yontif coincide, is doches haShabbos. We do allow for one to fulfill the mitzvah when Shabbos and Yontif coincide in day 1. That's betchilaso ve'arava besofo. And an arava on the 7th day, we also allow that as a trump card for Shabbos. No problem. So it says the Gemara, Pamachas shel shvi shel arava. Pamachas chal shvi shel arava lios b'Shabbos. So there was one time where the 7th day fell out on, they had to bring aravos on Shabbos. They view marbios shel arava. They brought aravos to the mikdash me'erev Shabbos. V'hinichum be'azara, and they placed it in the azara. V'hikiru bahen baitusin. Remember who the baitusin were? They were tzedukim. So take a look at Rashi for a little bit of a historical perspective. Rashi says, the first of the middle width lines of Rashi, 8 or 9 lines from the bottom, Rashi says, Dibur hamaschal v'hikiru bahen baitusin. Here gishu talmidei baitus. The students of baitus, they had a sense, they saw what was going on. Behin tzedukim. As discussed, one of the shitas of the mitzvah of Rava is that it was halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So they didn't hold of it, nothing at all. Like, what did their tefillin look like? The color and shape and material, that's not mafurish and chumash. We have how they do shchita. We have no idea how they did these things because it wasn't this way. So I Taka did a bris for a family. They were Koraim. That was it. She said, hello, my name is so-and-so. I'm a Karaite. I'm like, okay, are you born to a woman who's Jewish? Let's just get brass tags, like before we get anywhere. So yes, I confirmed that in fact she was Jewish. So what was the most comedic part about the whole thing? Korayim only believe in Dinei D'Oraisa. They had 100 minhagim. What a stira. How do you have a minhag if all that you believe in is a pasuk in Chumash? RL, remove the foreskin, done. They had music and they had tefillos and that unbelievable. They made their own religion, but you violated your own religion. You're a Korai. You're not supposed to have anything else. You're just, again, whatever's pasuk in Chumash. So they're clearly not on the derech. Hope they're not listening. Okay. So it says the Gemara, that's what was happening here. Higishu Talmidei Baitus, says Rashi, excuse me. Fine. So then they saw what was going on. because they knew that this was a strong custom of the Jewish people about the Arava. So what did they do? Unatalum, 8-9 lines from the bottom of the page, Unatalum, they took the Aravos, the Kovshum Tachas Avanim, and they put them under rocks. Now this was Lahachis. They don't hold a muksa. Why not? It's not mafurish in the Torah. It's not mafurish at all. It's a din derabanan. Right? There are shitas in the Gemara that say that muksa is a din deraisa. We paskin that it is a din derabanan. So the Baitusim, they hid the aravos under rocks. Lemachar, hikiru behen amei haaretz. There were some uneducated people. Rashi says they were on the side of the frum people, not on the side of the Koraim, and they didn't know halacha. Ushematum, they saw, oh, that doesn't belong there. It's like sometimes you see people who don't know halacha very well doing things that are very well intended but forbidden, and you're like, oh, uncomfortable. Sometimes I see this like when it's pouring rain outside and you come in and all your clothes, you're drenched. So someone's like, wait, let me go hang this up in the laundry room. That's an Isser Darabanan. You're not allowed to do that because it looks like you're doing Kvisa on Shabbos. That's not allowed. Even a towel, your clothes, nothing. Just put them down on your bed, put them down somewhere. You'll clean up the mess later, but you're not allowed to do it in a way where there's any appearance that it looks like laundry. It's like a similar example of the kinds of things that we see. So here too, these Amei Haaretz, granted they were on the right derech overarchingly, but they were not knowledgeable. So then Lamachar Yikir Ben Amei Haaretz Ushmatum, they took it out Mitachas Avanim, they brought it to the Kohanim, and they brought it and they stood it up on the Mizbech in order to fulfill the mitzvah on that day. They did not agree. It was a halachic concern from their perspective. It wasn't stam rebellion. They felt it was not halacha l'maisa. You're not allowed to be mechal Shabbos midrabanan in this case because chibut rava is a din is not explicit in the Torah. Alma, what do we see from here? Long story short, that it was binatilahi. That someone had to pick it up and carry it. Otherwise, okay, leave it over there. Why did they have to move it? Obviously, there was some type of carrying that was taking place to Yukta. Says the Gemara, that's great, but we didn't answer one question. We got sidetracked over the last 20 lines in asking Abayis 3 questions. The Ela Nidchut, still, after the Churban Beis HaMikdash, we should still have a case scenario where when the 7th day is Shabbos, that we should be allowed to do Arava. So the answer is the Gemara, Kaven da'anan lo dachinan, inhu nami lo dachu. Since we in Chutz La'aretz don't do it, they in Eretz Yisrael don't do it. There's a Rashi that carries over to the top, a very important Rashi on the top of Mem Daled Amud Aleph, Dibur HaMaschil l'ditu nami lo dachi shalolasos Yisrael agudos v'nira kishtei toros, a famous principle in Shas. One should make sure that we do not look like we have different religions. I'm sure there are people who would love to apply this to Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galios, but that is not the application here. Los asu agudos is a big shiloh. So the Gra, this comes up by the halachos of Tachanun. The Mishnah Brura paskins that when you do Tachanun and you're wearing tefillin, you put your head down on your right hand. But the Gra was of the opinion that afal pi that you're wearing tefillin, you put your head even on your left hand. So the Mishnah Brura was of the opinion everyone should do the same thing. Los asu agudos. But the Graniks, they still hold stark and they still put their head down on their left arm, even if they're wearing tefillin. So they consider that it's not a bizan, but that's where this principle of los agudos comes up. So in halachic terms, the reason why we don't allow for the arava that overlaps on Yom Tov, where the 7th day is Shabbos, why we don't allow the arava to be done that day, the reason why we do that and why we don't walk around when that day is Shabbos, we stand at our seats and say, Hoshana, Hoshana, Hoshana. Why? The reason why is because of this svara in the Gemara. And the Gemara says that because in Chutz La'aretz we were not good at Kviyat Diyarcha, so therefore even in Eretz Yisrael they don't do it. Los asu agudos. This requires a lot of research to know how to apply los asu agudos. There's a lot of different customs between Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz, things that are different. There's a whole host of halachos. So it requires a lot of research.
And also the Gemara before, there was a distinction between.
That's the bigger question.
Kasha.
Is that we left it, that it would come.
Seems that way. Yep, you're correct. 2 lines from the bottom, Mem Gimel Amud Beis. Yom Tov Harishon Diledidan Lo Dachi Uledidhu Dachi. What about Yom Tov Rishon? This was your question. But what about Yom Tov Rishon Diledidan Lo Dachi? There, outside of Chutz La'aretz, outside of Eretz Yisrael, it was Lo Dachi Uledidhu, but in Eretz Yisrael it was Dachi. Why did we say by Lulav it was Mutter? This is exactly your question to me, right? It says the Gemara top of Mem Daled Amar Ledidhu Nami Lo Dachi. No, we don't allow it at all. And this is, you can see the little aleph there over the word Ledidhu, and that would bring us to the Rambam and to the Shulchan Aruch, where we paskin halacha l'maisa that we do not, for the same svara, we do not allow for lulav to be done on Shabbos, even if Shabbos is day 1. which is it's really a big deal. It's in the development of halacha. This is where again another application of akar davar min haTorah b'sheva al taseh, out of concern of los asu agudos, that we don't want to look like we have shtei toros, to steal Rashi's language. So therefore we paskin chumrah alakula, both. We paskin that you don't use a lulav even when the first day is yantiv. I understand what you're saying that about los asu agudos, but we still have two mishnayos that need answering. Says the Gemara, the Tanachada, kol ha'am olichin es lulavein laharabayis v'tanan idach lebeis hakneses. So we saw earlier that these two mishnayos were seemingly very clear that we do this even on Shabbos. Umetartzinan, and we had answered over there, kam izman shebeis hamikdash kaim, kam izman she'ein beis hamikdash kaim, and that should be a kasha, because it seems to be that even after the beis hamikdash was destroyed, that we still allowed for lulav to trump that day. So says the Gemara, lo, you are incorrect. That's really not the right answer to those mishnayos. Rather, lo, idi v'idi bizman shebeis hamikdash kaim. Both of them is talking about when the Beis Hamikdash did exist. That's different. There we make a distinction between those mishnayos about that which was in the Mikdash, which had its own status. We did not employ Dini Derabanan in the Mikdash in general, Ein Shvus b'Mikdash. And here we're talking about Bigvulin. So what are we talking about now? All of that was pre-Chorban. Post-Chorban, Lo Sasu Agudos. Let's keep all the Jews on the same page. And therefore we do not do that. Amar le Abai le Rava, 6-7 lines down, Mem Daled Manal. Abai asks a question to Rava. Maishna lulav de avdinan lo shiva zecher lemikdash, umaishna Rava de lo avdinan lo shiva zecher lemikdash. Why is 1-7 and 1-6? Says the Gemara, Amar le hol va'adam yotze yedei chavasa be'arava shebelulav, because really it doesn't matter, really, and you have aravos in your lulav anyway, so you're using it anyways. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Amar le ahumi shum lulav hudeka avidle. That's not a separate mitzvah. It's included in the lulav. You can't do that. Those are two totally separate mitzvahs. You've got lulav and you've got arava, and they're not. It's the same branch, but it's not the same halachos. Let's say you're first going to pick it up and do lulav and then put it back down and then pick it up and do the mitzvah of arava. That's not the way the world turns. That's not what people do. Do you see people picking up the lulav twice in a row, once for the mitzvah of lulav and once for the mitzvah of arava? It's not the way things are. When we talk about lulav, which is a din d'oraisa, so then avdinan shiva zecher lemikdash. Yeah, there we require zecher lemikdash for 7 days. But arava derabanan, arava's derabanan. We just said it was halacha l'mosh misinai. We'll get there in a second. Arava derabanan lo avdinan zecher lemikdash. Says the Gemara, come on. Okay, we've literally learned this 5 times that arava is a din d'oraisa. Says the Gemara, leman. Who in their right mind would say that Arav is a din d'Rabbanan? If you want to say, when we saw this brisa many blot ago, it says on the side over here on Daf Lamed Daled, 10 blot ago, 10 days ago. If you want to say, behold, like Abba Shaul, what did he teach us? Ha'amar arve nachal in the plural, ksiv shtayim, that it has 2. Achas lelula v'achas lemikdash. That's a drasha gemura. That's a drasha d'oraisa. Don't tell me that Arava is derabanan. Abba Shaul learned that it was a drasha in the pasuk. In Irabanan, and if you want to tell me that it's a sheet of the Rabbanan, no, they said hilchasa gmirila, that it was halacha l'mosh misinai. It says the Gemara, Amar Rav Asi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Mishum Reb Nechunya, Ish Bikas Beis Chorasan, that we have 3 things that are halacha l'mosh misinai in this context. Eser netios, we said of the 10 trees, it's right before Shemitah, you're still allowed to clean that up before the Shemitah year kicks in. V'nisu chamayim, arava, I skipped the one key word. Arava, v'nisu chamayim, halacha l'mosh misinai. So you want to tell me that the reason why we have Zecher L'Mikdash by 7 days, even though only the first day is Deoraisa, we have 7 days because it's Deoraisa, but by Arava it's Derabanan. Nobody holds that way. It says the Gemara halfway down in Mem Daled Amud Aleph, Ella says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zvid Mishmei de Rava Lulav de Isle Iker Min HaTorah B'Gvulin Avdinan Le Shiva Zecher L'Mikdash. Arava de Lesle Iker Min HaTorah B'Gvulin Lo Avdinan Shiva Zecher L'Mikdash. It's a din d'oraisa in the Mikdash, Arava. Either because of Abba Shaul, because of the drasha, or because of the Rabbanan, because of halacha l'mosh misinai. But that was only in the Mikdash. In the Gvulin, it's not true. In the Gvulin, there was a din d'oraisa of lulav, but there was never a din d'oraisa of Arava. Let's do a tiny bit. I don't know, we're going to stop here. We only have a minute till Mariv. So we'll stop here at Amar Reish Lakish. I was planning to go to the top of the page, but just too much information. So we're stopping 2/3 of the way down at Amar Reish Lakish Kohan and Bali Mumin. Mirz Hashem, we will pick up on Shabbos with that. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
Shabbos when?